On May 31st, 2024, the Haikyuu movie, Haikyuu, The Dumpster Battle, or Battle of the Garbage Dump, my preferred title, was released internationally to mostly positive reviews. I was looking forward to this movie for a long time, a very long time. So when it came to a theater near me, I went and saw it twice. Yep, gotta get my money's worth on an AMC Stubs A-list membership. Not sponsored. I want to get into my thoughts on the movie, and more importantly, the future of the Haikyuu anime. But first, I should say, I have not read the manga for Haikyuu. I have remained anime only, which has definitely been hard with the long layoffs between new releases, and it got even more difficult after the manga came to an end. However, I've remained strong, and went into the movie not knowing how it would end, as I didn't know how much left of the manga there was to be covered. Although, knowing how sports anime work, I had an idea. Now, if you're watching this video about the new Haikyuu movie, I assume you've either seen it or at least watched the first 4 seasons of the show. But if for some reason you haven't, I'll give you an idea of what both the show and the movie are about. Haikyuu tells the story of Hinata Shoyo, a first-year high school volleyball player who joins Karasuno High School after watching the ace spiker, the Little Giant, take Karasuno to nationals years prior. As a fellow short player, Hinata wants to follow in the footsteps of the Little Giant and go to nationals with Karasuno. And despite his lack of experience and technique, his freak athleticism might just take him there. Now just fast forward a bit, 4 seasons of hype and all that, and here we are. Haikyuu, Battle of the Garbage Dump, covers the match at nationals between Karasuno and their storied rivals, Nekoma High School. These two teams had a history of practicing against each other back when Karasuno was coached by Coach Ukai, their most successful coach in history, and the grandfather of their current coach. Despite practicing together for years, Karasuno and Nekoma never got to face each other in an official match, and because of health reasons, former coach Ukai had to step down from coaching before that could happen. Since then, Karasuno had lost contact with Nekoma, but this year they began practicing together again, reigniting their famous rivalry and forming individual rivalries between the players. Most notably between Hinata and Kenma, Nekoma's setter and strategist. Karasuno had never beat Nekoma in practice, but everyone knew that only a real match could bring out the full potential of both teams. Now, let's get to the fun part. Having rewatched Haikyuu in the month leading up to the release, it hit me just how much Nekoma has built up from the very start of the series. Especially with that fresh in my mind, the movie was a lot of fun overall. Even just from a story aspect, having a movie that paid off 4 seasons worth of build up for Nekoma versus Karasuno, it really rewards your investment into the series, and Nekoma being the most built up opponent in the entire show makes every player on the court feel relevant. Usually in a Haikyuu match, you have the Karasuno players who you know and love, and you would like to see their moments and their hype moments in their development. But for the other teams, they have to do the work to build those teams during the match so that when things happen in the match for those teams, you're actually invested in both sides at the same time. I'll give Haikyuu credit though, because generally they do well to at least plant seeds for each team before we even get there, like the Dateko. They get planted early on through the way they need to bring Asahi back to the team. And of course you have Seijo and Shiro Torizawa who get built up super early on in the series. But someone like the Miya twins, they aren't that built up throughout the series. You do see a glimpse of one of the Miya twins in the camp with Kageyama, but the build up for none of those teams even come near the build up for Nekoma throughout the series. And speaking of players feeling relevant, in this movie, Kenma almost becomes the MC. A lot of the movie is about his past with Kuro and his relationship with volleyball. Throughout the movie, you see how volleyball went from something that he just did for Kuro and just because it was something he didn't mind, to it becoming something that he actually really enjoys and he doesn't want to stop doing, which was Hinata's goal from early on in the series. And that build-up is one of the major payoffs that this movie rewards us with. I'll get to the specifics of my issues later, but one of the things that really pulled me out of those issues was that the hype moments are extremely hype. There were a few of them, but I would have to say that the standout is the boom jump that Hinata does in this movie. If you've seen the show, you know that Hinata has been working on a new type of jump to really maximize his athletic potential, and Kageyama learned that jump from the other Little Giant candidate who he met in the All Japan camp. When he brought that back to Hinata, it wasn't something that came naturally to him. so he really only started doing it against the Mia twins. But in this movie, some things happened throughout the movie that forced Hinata into a corner, and him doing this boom jump was a major cathartic moment that got the entire crowd in my theater super excited. Now, from a technical standpoint, this movie really stepped up in certain ways from the TV series, which is something you definitely want to see when one of your favorite series decides to go the movie route. There's definitely some breathtaking choreography, camera work, and sound design in this movie, with the crowning jewel probably being the shot from Kenma's point of view toward the end of the movie, where the camera does a 360 rotation and you see everything happening on the court in slow motion, and slowly all the music and sound effects fade away and you just hear Kenma's breath over and over again as he loses his stamina towards the end of the match, and pictures Karasuno versus Nekoma's practice matches versus their official match, solidifying his love for the game and how much fun he's actually having in that moment. Now, I don't want to go into every single detail about the movie, just in case for some reason you haven't seen it yourself, but generally, this movie really got me excited for the final movie whenever that comes out. And they set up Hinata versus the other little giant, the one from the camp with Kageyama, and the next movie hopefully should be the battle for the new little giant title. But also, it probably has to be a lot more, which gets into some of the issues I have with the movie. Although overall I enjoyed the movie, there's some things I think that could have been tweaked. For one, the match was a bit too fast paced. It definitely could have been longer. It just felt like they were trying to speed run everything to keep it under 90 minutes, which they love to do for these anime movies for some reason. But it just had me wishing that we had gotten a full season to cover this and the next matches instead of just a 90-minute movie. And that brings me right to one of my other issues, that this movie spammed flashbacks. Like, my goodness, there were so many flashbacks in this movie. And I get it, you want to show the build-up that's happened between all these characters over the seasons, but I think they just should have had some faith in the viewers of the movie to have watched those seasons, or even if you haven't watched those seasons, because I went to the movie with someone who hadn't watched Haikyuu before and they actually really enjoyed the movie. But I think you should be able to have faith in the character interactions within the actual match to tell that story. There are so many flashbacks in this movie. Some of them I get why they need to be there, but some of them are just taking up runtime. And I feel like if they recycled that runtime into the actual pacing of the match, it could have been a way better paced 90 minutes than it ended up being. After watching the movie, I heard that they cut content between Coach Ukai and Coach Nekomata, which makes that even more disappointing, because if they wanted to include more backstory stuff, they should have committed to that backstory and cut some of the content from between the players, because the players actually get more interaction during the match. Realistically, the only way to solve most of these issues is to make this movie 2 hours, but anime movies rarely run that long, so it's kind of unfortunate that this is what we ended up with, even though I did actually enjoy the movie. I think it had potential to be even better. Even with those problems with the movie, the most important topic of this video is the future of Haikyuu, especially based on where this movie left us and what has already been announced to be in the works. Haikyuu is getting one final movie to finish covering the rest of the manga, and that probably won't be out for another few years. With that in mind, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm very worried about how Haikyuu is going to end. If you thought the pacing of this movie was fast, which I did, imagine how the final movie is going to be. In this movie, after beating Nekoma, they've reached the quarterfinals for the Little Giant battle. Now, that means either they lose, which itself isn't an issue, but say, in theory, they go on and win out and win the entire tournament. That means they have the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals left, which means 3 matches in 1 film, which would be an absolute abomination for Haikyuu. But even if they lose, you still have to wrap up the series after that. And apparently there's a time skip in the manga as well, which is how a lot of manga end up. So I just don't see how it gets the ending it deserves in only 1 more movie. I think in either direction, the final movie has to be at least 2 hours to even have a chance at wrapping the series up the way the fans would hope. But I'm doubtful that will become a reality, which means, unfortunately, the Haikyuu anime might be in trouble. Even with that somewhat negative ending, thanks for watching, especially if you made it this far. Comment your thoughts about the Haikyuu movie, and if you read the manga, let me know if I'm right to be worried about the ending. Believe me, I want to be wrong, but I just don't see it going well, which is a shame considering how great this anime has been since the beginning. Anyway, before I go on about it again, like and subscribe and all that stuff. I actually really appreciate it. There should be a new video out same time next week. See ya.